Hey, I'm Jade, and today I'm going to talk about relationship OCD, ROCD. I've been asked by a few of you guys on my previous videos to talk about it, and I realised I've never really talked about it on here, so it seemed like a good time to do that. So my core fear, biggest theme has always been around harm OCD, POCD type topics. And ROCD was quite sneaky because it was almost like, if you can relate, the secondary big theme. So I was scared of it. I was scared of the idea of not loving my partner. I was scared of being in the wrong relationship. And because it wasn't as terrifying as my main themes, I never really gave it attention until I was quite far along in my overall recovery plan. Why this topic is really good for me to talk about is that because it wasn't my main theme, even though it was very strong, I was able to make really good progress with it. And I'm able to talk to you about some of the things I did in order to get completely better from ROCD, to the point where today, every now and then, I feel a little bit of the sort of fear of missing out type feelings that come with ROCD that are really commonplace. But I honestly would liken those feelings to what I would consider to be normal life responses of somebody who is just in a relationship and sometimes feels niggling doubts about it. So I think I'm a good case study for relationship OCD recovery. To give you a bit of background as to my journey with ROCD, because this is going to be more about telling you my story so that you can feel less alone with it. And whilst it was my secondary theme, it was still extremely difficult, extremely terrifying, and it did affect my life in a huge amount of ways. So the biggest one that I can boil it down to, the biggest fear was always, what if I don't love my boyfriend, then fiance, now husband? That was the underlying thing. It was really confusing because at the start of our relationship, which was now 15 years ago, it was much more latched to, I love him too much. What if he doesn't love me? And obsessive checking, compulsive, like being a bit of a detective, like, what if he's cheating on me? There must be evidence that exists somewhere. And this is why I find ROCD so strange, is that throughout the years, it will be like there was never a happy middle ground. I was never just here in the relationship and comfortable and safe. It was always, if I'm having feelings for him, then I must obsess about his past and whether he's interested in other people, whether he likes other people, whether he's got feelings for other people, whether he's going to leave me. And if I was worried that I didn't love him, it would be, what if I've got feelings for other people? What if there's someone better out there for me? And so that just goes to show how irrational ROCD can be. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, hang on a minute, I didn't experience that. Mine is all in on, what if I don't love my partner? I had all in, I don't love my partner for probably 8 years at a time. So I completely understand how you're feeling. And some of the subtler things in there as well that acted as proof for me, like, this is the proof that I'm in the wrong relationship. Now, bearing in mind that I didn't know I had OCD until about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So I lived for 10 years of my relationship not knowing what ROCD even was. I remember the first night that ROCD hit me from a point of view of what if I'm missing out was, we were at his apartment and we were thinking of going out, but then he said, I don't want to go out tonight, I just want to chill. And I felt this rising, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm missing out on fun because of this. I could be out with other people. This is, my life is now boring. And it's sort of, it was this overwhelming feeling of, I'm in the wrong place, I shouldn't be in this relationship. And that was the first small feeling I felt about it, but I brushed it aside. And that just started to build. There started to become more and more proof. So it was like, that was the shift for me from, I love him too much, and what if he doesn't want me to, what if I don't want him? And that was the biggest, that was much more all consuming as a feeling. And interestingly, I actually used the other side of the spectrum as reassurance. So for example, if I would be looking through, oh, who does he follow? When we were boyfriend and girlfriend, if I saw like someone attractive, that would give me a rush of emotion. And then I think, there's the feeling, I do love him, I do love him. And so that side of my obsessions actually fed my other side. And I think that's a really interesting connection to make. And if you're doing this, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You're so upset that you're not feeling anything for your partner, that how can I find a way to feel something? Well, pain is a feeling. So if I just scour their past, or if I just become obsessed with an ex-partner or something like that, it's going to bring up this feeling. And so for me, fear of missing out was a huge one. It was like, I had loads of people tell me, well, you met your now husband when you were 20, your 20s are for having fun, your 20s are for getting out there, your 20s are for traveling, and you haven't done that. You've just settled down with someone and now you're married and you're going to wake up one day and regret it. I also remember an ex-boyfriend at the time said, oh, it's great that you're happy, but one day you will wake up and realize you made a mistake with being with this person and settling down with someone older than you, because my husband is older than me as well. And it was just all these small things that people had said that were like, just started to grow in the back of my mind. It's almost proof. And that's the thing with OCD, it's like, a brain without OCD doesn't store small facts as proof, and it also gives equal balance and weight to things that, you know, are contradicting that idea. So for example, if 5 people say to me, oh, you should never settle down young because you miss out on your 20s, and 5 people say to me, it's lovely to settle down young, it's so great that you found the person who makes you happy and safe and you can build a family and a life together, I'm not storing those 5 because they contradict my OCD fears. And so it's very interesting how we zoom in on the things that fuel our OCD fears. So the proof points were the fear of missing out feeling, that feeling of, oh my gosh, what if I could be traveling, and what if I could be doing fun things with friends instead of being in this relationship. I also had read something about this idea of trauma bond, and because I had an unsettling childhood, I figured, oh, this is the first safe relationship I felt, and so I feel safe, I feel protected, and I can, you know, I love this person. So obviously it was just because I needed safety. It wasn't actually the person for me. So now I'm in too deep, and I can't possibly back out now. And that happened in stages. So it's really funny that today I have 2 children and I'm married to this person. And my views are less irrational now. I don't see it as like there's no way out of this relationship. If I didn't want to be in it, I don't have to be in it. There would be lots of complications with that and lots of things I'd miss out on. So I find it sad, the idea that my kids wouldn't have their parents together. That would be a downside. But you can co-parent, I guess. So yeah, it's like, I know that there's upsides and downsides to any decision in life. And so this idea of this trauma bond really latched really hard. And it was like, you've gone too far. It started out as this trauma bond, you should never have settled down with this person. And basically at every stage, when he asked me to be his girlfriend, like, sounds very young, I was like, okay. And then when it was like, oh, when we moved in together, it was like another layer of panic. I wasn't too bad about living together because it was just moving into his apartment and just living there for a bit while we found a place. And then when it came to like signing contracts on a 12-month rental agreement together, I felt overwhelming sense of dread and panic, and I wanted to run away. Then the discussion around actually buying a house together was just, I couldn't talk about it for so long. I was just like, it's wrong for me to lead him on like this. I shouldn't be doing this. And I know deep down this is not right. And it was like really difficult because I didn't know I had OCD. I would talk to people at work and say, oh, did you ever feel doubts about when you were decided to move in with Gareth? Or did you ever wonder and question why, you know, did you get anxiety about buying a house together? And you're like, no, I was so excited. I was the one who was pushing it. If you're feeling something in your gut that's telling you it's not right, maybe you need to listen to that. And that is the mainstream advice. So when you don't know you have ROCD, you just feel like a fraud. So I felt like a huge fraud. When my husband proposed to me, it was really technically romantic in Italy, and I just froze and was like sick and anxious, and I deep down loved the idea of it. But he offered me the ring and I was just startled, and he was quite funny at the time because he was like, it was on a fast flowing river, and he said, put it on or give it back, put it on or give it back, because I was like shaking with this ring over a fast flowing river. And I did obviously put the ring on because now we're married. But it's just really funny to think back to how much I would have enjoyed those things, those special moments now that I'm recovered from ROCD. It would have been a lot nicer to enjoy those moments of overwhelming panic. Because today I'm at peace with the fact that you don't need to be 100% certain about a person anyway in reality. And so there's no such thing as this perfect relationship, this idea I bought into of this perfect union, but also the acceptance that there will be relationships better than mine. There will be connections stronger than mine. And so I don't want to be reassuring myself that, oh, no one has a perfect relationship, because actually I have got friends who are like, they've been, and this will be triggering for you, they've been with their partner for however many years and they are literally smitten, besotted. They literally could not imagine life with anyone else. And that used to trigger me greatly. But now it doesn't, because I'm like, well, I'm happy with where I've arrived. And actually, once making peace with never having those connected bonding feelings again, they come back a lot of the time, but only when you're not needing them anymore. So I have amazing moments of connection with my husband that come from a real deep place. And I don't think they'd have been there if I wanted them there as much as I used to. So now it's like a nice addition to the relationship. It's like, I don't need that feeling anymore. We have gone on this 15-year journey. We're family now. I feel like he's a family member that I obviously love. And then where we have that romantic moment with a glass of wine or just talking, there's music or whatever it is, that's a bonus. But I think what we do is we try and create that. So if we're like, let's go to a romantic restaurant, make sure there's nice background music, have a glass of wine, make sure he's wearing your favorite shirt, all this stuff, whatever it is for you. Maybe it's going to a concert, maybe it's going skateboarding together, whatever it is, you're trying to create artificial scenarios and your body won't produce emotions in that way. And so for me, it was about letting go of all that. It's like, I can still go for a nice meal with my husband. There doesn't need to be any feelings there. We can have a lovely time. We have so much in common. We can talk about our days and interesting things. And yeah, absolutely at peace that there are other people in this restaurant right now who look more in love than us. I'm at peace with that. I've made peace that I could be with someone different and it could be better. And I'm not reassuring myself that everyone gets like this and it's just a blip and whatever. So those different levels of the relationship, at every time I felt I can't go back now. I've just said I'm engaged. I've told the whole family I'm wearing this ring. There's no going back now. And then the marriage, oh, there's definitely no going back now. I could have gone back with the engagement, but we spent money on a wedding. There's no going back now. And then once I had a child, it was like, there's definitely no going back now. Because if you split up with him now, you're just like your parents. You don't care about your kids. And it latched to my kids then of like this idea of you're selfish, you're putting your own romantic life ahead of your kids, and you're just going to go off traveling with people and not care about your kids anymore, and you're going to be reliving your 20s just because you didn't get that, and your poor children, they're going to suffer from all of this, and when you're a grown up they're going to hate you. Like, this is just inside my brain at those times. And it's just so interesting how it latches to different places. Like, I no longer minded the idea of, if you leave your husband, he's going to be sad. It was more like, oh, well, yeah, that would have been fine. Like, breaking off an engagement would have been fine. Or breaking off a marriage would have been fine. It's the kids. And every level, it just tells you the old level, you were worrying about nothing. So there was those things. And there was also this idea of genetics. Like, I always had this irrational belief that, like, people should be with people that they are like genetically. And so I think I'd read this thing once. It was like, your best partner is someone who looks like your dad and acts like your dad and is like your dad, because genetically you're more wired to someone like that. And that may well be true. It probably is something in that, that like you'd be encouraged to be with someone genetically that matches you. I don't know. And obviously, you know, this is my irrational brain working here. I don't believe that in the sense of like our differences in the world. And so I felt like, okay, a big trigger for me was height. So I'm marginally taller than my husband and definitely taller when I've got heels on. And so that latched really hard, because it was telling me that you can't be with someone that because you're incompatible. It was a reason to be incompatible. Like, it wasn't that he was short or I was tall. It was that he should be with a shorter person and I should be with a taller person. Like, people who are tall belong together and people who are short belong together. People who have blonde hair belong together. It was like, it was like categorizing. So it could be likened to, you know, when you've got like order in OCD where people want everything lined up and everything perfect. And it just felt like a reason why, to explain why I didn't feel right. And so the height thing latched for ages, absolutely ages. And one of my exposures for that was to wear heels and feel the discomfort. So that was really good. And then also, I think if I ever got like a crush, which is a taboo topic to talk about in married scenarios, but actually married people get crushes too, believe it or not. You don't just meet this person, in my experience, and then that's the love of your life for the rest of your life, and you never meet someone and feel some kind of connection. And so for me, that also felt like proof. So if I met someone and felt a spark, I would think, this must mean I should be with them, not my boyfriend. And there were times when I ended up making a mistake because I thought, well, this must mean something. So if I'm getting this rush of feelings, that means there's something in it. And yeah, so I became infatuated with somebody and just really made some mistakes. And it was just, that's when everything came crashing down, because it was like, this isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. This isn't who I am. Why did I do that? I immediately confessed, which is classic OCD person. Like, yeah, this just happened. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm awful. And just crashing down. And I think all of that stuff I just listed links really nicely to this idea of like, OCD doesn't want mistakes. It doesn't want you to do anything wrong. It doesn't want you to feel anything for anyone else. It doesn't want you to think about anyone else. It doesn't want you to miss out on anything. It doesn't want you to look back and think, oh, I missed my 20s. It doesn't want you to have trauma bonded with someone or know that there's someone better out there that you missed out on. Like that was a big one for me, was like, what if I lost a person who could have been my person? It was like, what if I missed my chance? So like there was a crush I had really early on and we had this incredible connection just as two people in the world. And then he ended up getting with someone, and then they eventually got married and stuff and have a child. And OCD was just like, if you had said to him, this is how I feel, we should be together, then you would have been together. You definitely would have. And you've missed that forever. And you will never, ever wake up and not think about that. So that was a really big one for me. But then if another crush came along, that old crush became, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so it was just really confusing times. If you're currently struggling with crushes or infatuation or limerence, you need to treat that, I guess, in the same way as any other form of intrusive thought. It's with acceptance of like, why should a married person or a personal relationship never feel something for someone else? And also, you know, this whole idea of like the relationship has to be perfect. You know, when I talked about specifications like height and hair color and build, you know, I know friends who've had OCD where they're like obsessed with, you know, I don't know, body type or facial feature or something they just cannot shake off. And it's really interesting that like if they had the feature that we wanted, maybe we would focus on something else. And it's just fascinating to me where it goes. And so what did I do to get better from ROCD, just to finish, now that you've seen my story? And I'll just give you the worst example of how bad my ROCD got. I did take off my engagement ring and give it back 3, 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 times and said, I can't marry you. You need to find someone who is certain. There you go. Definitely not going with uncertainty. I once, when I have an episode around, when I had an episode around him cheating on me, so super early on in my early 20s, I was convinced that he had fully cheated on me and was cheating on me all the time. And I just literally like locked him out of the house and was crying behind the door, like, you're not coming in, you're not coming in, I'm not letting you in. And he was just like, what is going on? I've just been to work. I've got food. What is going on? It's like, you can't come in, you can't come in. And yeah, so that was a little bit on the funny side, to be honest. We were very new to relationships. And the other one was, yeah, the mistake I made. So essentially, let's just put it out there, being unfaithful to my partner on an occasion and then confessing it to him and freaking out, and just, we absolutely collapsed for about a year from that. And that was like a big thing in our marriage. It was like, how do we get through this? And again, I didn't know I had ROCD, didn't know I had OCD. So it was like we were treating it like an infidelity in a relationship, which of course it was, but it was more complex than that, because I had my full breakdown of OCD as a whole and lost about 3 stone of weight. It was like the catalyst for all of it falling apart, because it felt like everything that you are scared of is true because you just acted out on a fear, so everything's true. And so it led me to a good place where I sought therapy, and I, after 4 years of therapy, then found out I had OCD. And so that's when the answers started to come in. But what did I do? It was a really long road. I focused so much on POCD and harm OCD type recovery that ROCD didn't even get a look in. And actually, from working with OCD recovery, Rob, it was like, you need to look at your ROCD, Jade. This is affecting your life. You need to look at this. I was like, no, I don't. It's cool. It's all good. I don't need to look at it. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And eventually I did look at it, and I was able to do some really good exposure work. Uncertainty was super important, and also unconditional life acceptance. So if you're new to this channel and you don't know what unconditional self and life acceptance is, kind of the concept by Albert Ellis, who's a doctor of REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy. That's what we talk about loads on this channel. That's what was the game changer. So I had loads of CBT, exposures, uncertainty, leaving thoughts alone, mindfulness, but this was the missing key. So exposures were things like wearing heels and feeling the discomfort and having people say to me, wow, I could never wear heels if it made me taller than my husband, and feeling comfortable with that. And I definitely didn't feel comfortable with it for ages, but about a month ago, I went to a wedding and I wanted to wear heels. So I did wear heels and I felt awesome, and we just had a great night, and it didn't affect me. And it was just the best feeling in the world, because I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to the wedding wanting to feel in love with my husband. I didn't care if I did or didn't. And so I actually did, which was really nice kind of piece of progress. I also... So exposures around that, exposures were things like not confessing things, not talking about my feelings too much obsessively, cutting out compulsive behaviors. Like a few years ago, I would be obsessively checking things like his emails and his phone and things like that. And like my husband just got so exhausted by it. He was like, everything's open, like everything's there, like go to town, whatever you find, just let me know. Like he was just so fed up of it. It nearly ruined us a few times because I was just so obsessed with finding out. It was more about, my brain knew there was a reason for us not to be together. I just needed to find it. It wasn't even like a jealousy thing. It was it exists, I just haven't found it yet. And so if I can find this proof and evidence that we're not supposed to be together, that makes everything so much simpler. We can just end it now. It's easier. We can move on. Done. And so now that I've made peace with, and this is where unconditional life acceptance comes in, this idea of whatever life throws at me, whatever happens in my life, I'm at peace with it. I actually had to make peace with the fact that maybe my husband has had affairs with other women in the past. So I was always obsessed with the early years of our relationship as to whether he'd been with other people and things like that. So I actually made peace with, I created a scenario in my head, he has slept with someone else. And it was really interesting that, like, by being at peace with that idea, things started to unlatch. Like, why would I care anymore if he'd been for a glass of wine with a woman at some point 3 weeks after we'd been dating, when I'm at peace with the idea of him sleeping with someone else? It's like, where does it say that your relationship has to have been perfect with no mistakes? And this leads me nicely to today's environment that's not helpful at all with ROCD. I can only imagine that my life would have been 10 times harder. I went through my worst with ROCD 10 years ago when there wasn't really anything such as TikTok or Instagram. And so the best that you could have was like old tag photos on Facebook. There was nothing else, nothing you could find. We didn't know anyone who wasn't in our immediate circle. How would you know someone if you didn't know them, if that makes sense? Like, now you can find people on Instagram, but you wouldn't really know someone unless you knew them on Facebook and added them as a friend. So today you're scrolling TikTok and it's like red flags about a partner. If he's doing this, he's a red flag. If he's doing that, he's a red flag. And I just want to say that I think our view on what a relationship should be has become very rigid. This idea that, oh, if a person doesn't like want to be with you and marry you after 2 months of dating, they were wasting your time. And I think we need to just slowly unpin ourselves from these irrational beliefs. Like, relationships take all forms. You know, look at Ross and Rachel from Friends. They were on, off, on, off, on, off. Loads of people could say, oh, Ross, you know, Rachel should never have chosen you because you went off and married someone else in the meantime and you didn't love her that much because you didn't choose her first. The way the show presents it is this magical love story. And so it's all about how things are presented to us. And one of the things I did compulsively was watch TV shows where love was glamorized and crushes and things like that. And that's good on an exposure level, but actually it's wiring our brain that like this fast, quick fix of like high intensity, high emotion, high adrenaline relationship is what we're wanting. And I think we should all get back down to basics and just like nurture the relationship we're in, and you know, not get obsessed with this perfect love story while accepting that it may exist. So I hope that's been useful for you today, if only for you to know that you're not alone, that I've been there with the depths of feeling, the panic that can rush over you when you feel those feelings of uncertainty. Uncertainty was a huge one for me. It's like, I will never know. I will never know if leaving my husband or staying with him is the right thing to do. There are going to be two life scenarios. These are the two worst case scenarios. I get to 60 and I look back on my life and I'm standing next to my husband on one of our daughter's wedding days, and I'm so happy to be next to him to share this special moment, and I couldn't be happier. But I also think to myself, you missed out on so much fun. You missed it all. All you've had is a family, which is like, now that I'm learning about family, just one of the most remarkable, incredible things in the world. But yeah, I'm overwhelmed with a sense of dread of like, you've lost out on that person and you could have been with this person, and what about that person, and what about that holiday and that experience and that thing you could have done for yourself, and where your business could have gone, and all this stuff. And then there's the other side, which is I'm at my daughter's wedding and my husband's there and I'm there and I like to think we're friends, and I'm with someone else and he's with someone else, and I'm looking at my daughter getting married and thinking about how much we missed by doing it all together. And I have this sinking feeling that I split my family up for no reason, and I'm in the same position I was then. And it's, you know, these are the two fears I get, which is like, you're terrified of both decisions. And I think that's where ROCD is clever, is like, oh yeah, do that. Oh, but what if that happens? Oh yeah, do that one then. Yeah, but what if that happens? And it's like making peace with both of those. Can I live with myself if my kids say to me, you broke our family up, mum, and I will never forgive you? And can I live with the idea that for the sake of keeping my family together, I potentially stayed in the wrong relationship? I can deal with both of those. I'll deal with them at the time. It's going to be fine. So that just leaves you, by making peace with all those things, because I know your question now is like, well, how do I know the answer then? It's like the answer comes to you when you no longer care about having the answer. It's really hard to explain, but it just stops feeling urgent, because the urgent feeling, that's the one, isn't it? It's like, you need to leave now. The urgent feeling goes, you start to just feel more at peace with life as a whole. You recognize that your relationship is just part of your life, not whole of your life. And you just make peace with life as a whole. So I hope that's been useful to you. If there's any questions, please drop them below and I will comment. I will respond to them on my upcoming Q&A video, question and answers. And I hope this has been useful. Have a good day. Bye.